What's up, guys? 0-1 yesterday. Obviously not the outcome that I wanted. Not the best couple of days, but got to start turning it around. I'm going to have 3 plays today, 1 in the NBA and 2 in Major League Baseball, and hopefully I'm getting back on track here. No NHL today. I will say, I forgot to say, congratulations to the Dallas Stars. They won their series against the Colorado Avalanche. A close series, really closer than the scores may have made it look. I still think that Colorado may have been the slightly better team, really, out of the two, and in that series. All right, we'll talk about the NBA. We have 2 Game 7s today. Game 7, man. And I will say, as far as the NBA is concerned, that other Dallas team, congratulations to the Dallas Mavericks, who were getting kind of blown out of their own building last night in Game 6 against Oklahoma City, and they made a huge comeback. I think, what was it, like an 18-point comeback or something like that? And I think they blew an 18-point lead in one of the games in the series, in the middle of the series. Last night, it was kind of the reverse. Oklahoma City had the collapse, and the experience won out, and Dallas has advanced, and they will be facing the winner of tonight's game, T-Wolves Nuggets. But first, I'll talk about Pacers Knicks, the Eastern Conference semifinal here. The winner of this game will be playing my Boston Celtics on Tuesday. I will say first, in Games 7, you want to look to the under or pass as far as the total is concerned. Game 7 tends to be where you get the most defensive intensity. Obviously, everything is on the line. It comes down to a single game series, basically. So it becomes sort of like a championship type of game with defensive intensity. But when you think of the Indiana Pacers, you don't really think defense. And the books do know that this is the case. So they tend to line Game 7 significantly lower on the total than other games, which is what they've done here. The total in this one is down from 210 to 208. So it looks like there still has been some play driving it down on the under. It's at a point where I just don't want to get involved in it, although I used to just blindly play Game 7s under, but I think we're past that point now. Just like the books kind of adjusted to the NBA playoff zigzag, they've adjusted to these Game 7 totals too, and they know that these games tend to be significantly lower scoring. They have dropped the number significantly on the total. I think it's hard to find a Game 7 total where you can actually find value really at this point, unfortunately, whereas the zigzag, you can still kind of pick your spots, which I think we do have one today. Oh, that might be a hint where you can come in and actually make that play. But yeah, as far as the total in Pacers Knicks, it looks like 57% of the tickets are on the over. I'm kind of surprised it's not more with the Pacers being a high-scoring team, but the recreational bettors do know that the Knicks have a lot of injuries, although I would say that if OG Anunoby, his injury, him being out actually affects probably the defense more than the offense. And probably if you like the under in this one, you probably want him to play and you want his defense in there because otherwise the Pacers would probably have an easier time putting up some points. 63% of the cash, by the way, is also on the over in that one, which is kind of surprising to me to see that cash discrepancy. I don't think that's actually the case, though, because the line has moved down. The professional bettors know that this is like an under or pass type of scenario in Game 7. As far as the side is concerned, I think there's a stronger way to play it on the side, although you do have to worry about injuries coming into play for the Knicks, of course, as has been the case all series. The Knicks, I believe, in the earlier games at home in the series, what were they, like 4 or 4.5 point favorite maybe in a couple of them, or maybe they're 4.5 and 3.5 in games 1 and 2, I forget. And then I believe I played the Knicks in Game 5 after they lost 2. So the home team has won every game in the series. The home team, I believe, has covered every game except for Game 3 where the Pacers won and didn't cover. They won by 5, and I think it was a 7-point line in that one because of the Knicks' injuries. And then the odds makers came in and dropped the line in the next game. And it was an easier spot for the Pacers in the next one. Back in Game 5, I think the Knicks were only, 2.5? Maybe they went off 3 or something. I remember it was a lower number because I came in and I played the Knicks. So you're getting into sort of this like zigzag type of thing going on in this series where the Knicks won in a blowout in Game 5. Then it flipped back to Indiana in Game 6. Indiana was coming off the embarrassing result. They won in not quite a blowout, I would say, although the final score kind of made it look closer than what the game was, where I played the Pacers in that one in the return home spot. So actually, it was the Pacers blew out the Knicks in game 4. Then the Knicks zigzagged in game 5, bounced back from that blowout, blowing out the Pacers. Then the Pacers bounced back from the blowout in game 6. So I won on both of those games. So my read on the series has been okay. Now we come back to New York for game 7. This line is up from -3 to 3.5 now, looking like it's going through the 3.5 with juice. Sort of back towards where the line was before for the Knicks in some of the earlier games. 51% of the tickets on the Knicks, 60% of the cash, though. So it looks like the line movement and the cash discrepancy, both on the Knicks. That is the way I would lean on the side in this one. And I was close to making a play on this one. I think there's some question marks that kind of keep me off of it a little bit that make me slightly hesitant, but I do like that side. But it's got to be, you got to pay attention to the injury report, man, for the Knicks. So the Knicks, when they were more healthy in the earlier games in the series, yeah, that's why the line was higher than it was. And then the line in game 5 at New York had dropped all the way down to 2 because Anunoby was still out. And he's been out, I think, since game 2 maybe in the series now. And the Knicks lost, I always forget his name there, big man, the center. They lost him in game 1, and he's not coming back. He's out for the entire series. He might be out for the entire playoffs. I don't even know. So the Knicks, yeah, those injuries are factoring in, but now we get a spot where I think the books are kind of throwing up a number here, not exactly knowing what's going to happen with the injury situation. Because I think the 3 or 3.5 kind of indicates that the books think that there is a chance that Anunoby is going to come back. And if he does, I think you'll see the line get closer to 4.5 again, potentially. When he was out in the previous game at New York, like I said, the line was like 2.5, I think. I think I laid either 2.5 or 2. Actually, I think that line wound up dropping down to 1 actually before the game tipped off. So the odds makers are kind of adjusting to that Anunoby news, and there will be more news. So you got to take a look at that. Like, keep an eye on that, I guess. So if you think he's going to come back and the line could really only possibly go up on the Knicks from here, and you like the Knicks, I think it makes sense to take the Knicks now rather than later, because I don't expect that the line is going to drop on them unless we hear that Anunoby is actually out, but it seems like that's not going to be the case. And how far could it really drop? Maybe it would drop back down to like 2 or something like that. But I kind of expect him to be out there. But then you have to wonder, is he going to be 100%? I don't know for sure. And then Josh Hart is actually on the injury report now because he suffered an abdominal strain in the previous game, in game 6, in the fourth quarter. And I think he didn't play for the entire fourth quarter. So both of those players are actually listed as questionable right now. And I would say I'm leaning towards both of them playing, but they're probably not going to be 100%. But this is game 7, man. So you see these players like gut through injuries when it's a very meaningful game like this. As far as like, does that affect the total one way or the other? Well, I said Anunoby being out, I think really just actually kind of hurts it if you want to play the under, because you want his defense to be in there, which I think is more impactful than his scoring is. It actually winds up being kind of a tough game to read for all those reasons. But situationally, as far as like the zigzag is concerned, and the fact that historically in game 7, you want to look to under and the home team in these games, game 7s. The home team tends to be the better team and the favorite usually. When it sets up for them in a game 7, they tend to show up in these games. So that is the way that I would lean in this one. And of course, it is the way I'm going to lean in the second game, which is where I'm actually going to have a play in the night game. T-Wolves Nuggets. Of course, this is the game with 2 very good defenses. So this total is lined very low. Like the Pacers Knicks is already down to 208. And I think we saw some totals in like the high 210s, maybe even around 220 in that series at some points. T-Wolves Nuggets, of course, has had the lower totals in the series because this is a much more defensive series because the Pacers aren't in this series. This total's down from 199.5 to 198. 56% of the tickets on the over, but 81% of the cash on the over. I'm not sure I buy that either because, again, you see the line has dropped a little bit. And the professional bettors know that it's kind of an under or pass type of situation, like I keep saying. But maybe the line just gets so low now. Like the books like now over adjusted to that phenomenon to the point where it actually makes sense to play the over. I'm not really so sure just because you're going against the strong situational play there if you do it. I think it's just you got to pass if the number's not good. It's either you play the under because the situation is so strong if the line is good enough, or if it's not, then you just pass it. So that will be the case for me on these totals. Slightly into the under in both of them just because it's a strong situation. T-Wolves Nuggets, I don't think that any game in the series has been lined below 200 until this one, but maybe I'm wrong about that. I'd have to go check, but I think most of them have been in the mid 210 range, somewhere between 205 and 209, I think, for the most part. So the books have definitely dropped the total on both of these, knowing that it's game 7. As far as the side is concerned, that's obviously where I'm going to have the play. This is a strong situational angle, man, to play the Denver Nuggets. As soon as they lost to the T-Wolves in game 6, it was like, you got to play the Nuggets in game 7, man. I mean, this comes down to the Nuggets have more experience, even though it's true that the T-Wolves are playing with revenge from losing to Denver and getting eliminated in the first round of the playoffs last year. But are the T-Wolves going to be able to get over the hump after that, still with these young guys who are not used to a game 7 like this deep into the playoffs? I don't know. When they're facing the returning champs who have just been there and done that, and the Nuggets were being counted out after they lost the first 2 games of this series at home, everybody was saying the Nuggets are dead. So I came in and played the Nuggets in game 3. It seemed to be a very good bounce back spot, even though they had failed to bounce back in game 2. This is still the returning champs with the experience, the Nuggets, man, and they really showed up and won game 3 in a blowout. The T-Wolves were in the bounce back spot in the next game, and they did not bounce back. And maybe that inexperience started coming into play as the Nuggets were able to beat them again to tie the series and then win a 3rd straight game back at home, which did not really surprise me. And the Nuggets kind of showing that they're the better team. But then just when everybody is all of a sudden starting to like hype Denver again, Denver goes into Minnesota and just lays a complete egg in game 6, the worst game of the series. You thought those home games were bad. Like game 2 was really bad for the T-Wolves. Nothing could have been worse than game 6, man, for the T-Wolves. So now I think we get a nice bounce back spot for the Nuggets, excuse me. So now I think we get a nice bounce back spot for the Nuggets here, man. And they're laying a similar price to what they were in the first game, or actually maybe even in the first 2 games of this series. I think in game 2, the line might have gone up on them to the point where it was like, you can't play them, man. When they're up to like, I think they were 4.5 in game 1, and the line actually got up to like 6.5 in game 2. So it's 4.5 right now with juice now, though. It opened 5 and it dropped down to 4.5. There were some straight 4.5s out there, and I was able to grab one at the 4.5. It looks like mostly it's 4.5 with juice, so you probably have to kind of still lay the 5 on it. Maybe you might be able to find some scraggler 4.5s that are out there too. I think either one makes sense here. I don't like the percentages on this one. You see 65% of the tickets on the Nuggets, making it look like the Nuggets are a bit public again, which coming off of such an embarrassing loss, it kind of surprised me that they'd be that public, even though, of course, they are the returning champs with the MVP. But everybody knows the T-Wolves have star power as well, a bunch of stars in that team. Cash looks like it's evenly split 50-50. I don't know if we're going to see that change before tonight, because this game isn't until 8 p.m. Eastern, whereas the Eastern Conference game is in the afternoon. But I'm just going to do it. I'm going to play the situation and come in on the Nuggets. I think it's a strong situation, man. And when you lose by 40-something points like that, and I think at various points the Nuggets were down by at least 50 in that game, the Nuggets just didn't show up in that game at all, man. And I think they were just thinking, well, we can win game 7 if it comes down to it. We'll be back at home. We'll be able to do it. Is the league kind of, is there some rigging going on there? I don't know, because obviously there's more money involved, more advertiser dollars. The league gets more money if we get a game 7 here in a big series like this. So is that factoring in? I don't know. Maybe, but the Nuggets just basically benched all their players for the last like quarter of that game. So really, there's not much to take away from how that game ended. Like the Nuggets just didn't show up to play, and then they just took all their guys out and were like, we're not going to win this game. So let's just prepare for game 7. So I actually like that aspect of it, where the Nuggets are going to be able to, they're going to be in a nice bounce back spot here. Should be able to make adjustments after that. When you get blown out like that, you're the team that has all the adjustments to make. If you're Minnesota, you're riding like pretty high, even though you know this is a huge game, game 7, you do have to win this. But after a game like that, it's like, what can you possibly adjust? I don't know what you can adjust. And the Nuggets have had like Rudy Gobert defending Jokic. And it looks like even though Gobert is, he's the defensive player of the year or whatever, one of the best defensive players in the NBA. Yeah, but it looks like he is not very good at applying that defense to guarding Jokic. Jokic has the upper hand in that battle, man. So I think that might help the Nuggets as well. I think the line is probably right about where it should be as far as it being at like 4.5. I think maybe somewhere around 4 would actually probably be a fair line as far as looking at the power ratings guys who actually have the T-Wolves almost like right around where the Nuggets are. I still have the Nuggets just a little bit higher, and especially in a game like this where I think experience looms large. So I'm laying the Nuggets -4.5. I like that. I don't know if there's anything else to say about that, but the Nuggets having that a little bit of that extra rest, having pulled their starters like earlier in the previous game, and the game looking a lot worse than it is, man. I mean, the Nuggets are obviously, they're the returning champs. They're one of the best teams in the NBA. They're not as bad as they looked in that game. And the T-Wolves are also a very good team, but this is like a prime bounce back spot. When you're one of the best teams in the NBA and you're coming off a massive, massive blowout, that tends to be a very, very good spot to play on that team. So that'll be the play on the Denver Nuggets. Move over to Major League Baseball, where I have two plays here. Let me see here. Or actually, am I going to wind up with one play now? Because it looks like I'm seeing undecided in this pitching matchup with the Dodgers now. That's not good. Hold on. All right, well, it's going to be either one or two plays, but it depends on whether the Dodgers pitcher is actually undecided or not in this one, because that play is going to be dependent on the Dodgers having the pitcher who I want there. I will say that just quickly, I do slightly lean to the under in Seattle-Baltimore because the starting pitching matchup is pretty good for an under in that one with Kirby against Burns. Both good pitchers, and they both have good stats against the opposing hitters, although both those offenses are pretty good as well. So a little bit of hesitation on that one, but I think that might be one of the better ways to look in the games today. I will also mention that I would be close to taking a look at Oakland because Oakland is trying to avoid the sweep against Kansas City. Kansas City does have a divisional matchup up next against Detroit, which they might maybe even look ahead to, considering that to be maybe a little bit of a bigger series, even though Detroit has not been one of the better teams in the AL Central this year. But J.P. Sears, overall, I would say Sears is the worst pitcher between him and Singer, so that's what kind of keeps me off of this. But Sears has been pitching pretty well this year with a 3.96 ERA, 1.14 whip, good stats, and Kansas City has barely seen him at all. They only have two guys who have ever seen him before, and they're only 1 for 7 off him lifetime with 0 extra base hits and 2 strikeouts. So 143 batting average off him and 286 OPS. So I actually think Sears does have a bit of an edge in the starting pitching matchup, even though I think overall Singer is the better pitcher and the more proven pitcher. Singer having a nice bounce back campaign so far this season from last year's not very good season. He's been alternating good and bad seasons, which is weird. But this year, 2.84 ERA, 1.11 whip with good strikeout numbers, pretty good strikeout walk numbers. Nothing to really hate about his stats this season, except he has been really bad in his history versus these Oakland hitters for whatever reason. I don't know. These Oakland hitters just hit him well. They're 13 for 29 off him lifetime with 5 doubles, 4 home runs, only a 3-to-1 strikeout walk ratio, 448 batting average, and 1,501 OPS. So I would be very hesitant to want to look at Kansas City at this one. I would lean to the Oakland A's in that one, and they're getting a decent underdog price in that one. Should I actually play this one? I mean, we see Kansas City lined. They were at -170. They've dropped to -167 now. 80% of the tickets on them, so they're very public as they have the way better record. Like the recreational bettors know Kansas City is the better team, which they are, but that's factored into the line. They only have 76% of the cash, though, with the number moving down on Kansas City a bit, down to the 167. Am I going to have an extra play here in Major League Baseball on that one? Let me see. I'm not going to quite do it with that one, but I do like that pitching matchup. You can come in and get Oakland at like a +150 money line, which looks pretty tempting. To lay to take the +1.5 run line, you'd have to lay like -135 or something on it. So I think the play would be to just take a shot on the Oakland money line on that one at +150 or so. So I would lean to that direction there. I don't think I'm going to quite do that one. And then we got one play I'm going to be on, which is in the somewhat earlier afternoon slate, the central afternoon slate, I would say. I'm going to play on the Chicago Cubs, man. I think we do have an actual mismatch here as far as these pitchers are concerned, just in general and with how these pitchers pitch against each other. I think the bullpen situation is a bit of a wash after yesterday. This is going to be a rubber game of the series as the Pirates won in game 1 behind rookie phenom Paul Skeens with the stash. I don't even think he has the stash anymore. I think he has a beard now or something. But either way, I mean, go with the facial hair, obviously, at all times. he had a very, very good performance. He was actually throwing a no-hitter in that one, and for some reason Pittsburgh took him out because he was up to 100 pitches. Like, what are you doing, man? He's got a no-hitter through 6 innings or whatever. He's got 11 strikeouts. You're going to take him out and not even give him the chance at the no-hitter? And I think Pittsburgh had a big lead in that one too, so it's not like you were like risking losing the game if you're going to take him out. I don't know why they did that, but who knows? And then Imanaga, who's been dominant, completely dominant this year for Chicago, had a nice start yesterday for them. And they took him out after only 88 pitches, which is weird because he was just completely dealing. It was weird that they took him out. It seemed like he probably could have pitched longer into the game. I mean, baseball, just like these other sports, is becoming pussified, man, where you don't see these pitchers pitching complete games anymore, not going deep into games. And even back when I was growing up through like the 90s and the 00s and whatever, you still had pitchers that were throwing complete games all the time, man. It was just a thing. Now it's like not even a thing anymore. It's bizarre to me. I don't like it. I really don't love it. So that means the starting pitching matchup actually means less as far as handicapping games. But I'm so old school that I do factor it in. And I hope I'm not over factoring it. But I'm looking at the bullpens here. The bullpens, I think, are just a bit of a wash. Both teams used two of their relievers yesterday and didn't really use them for many pitches. So both teams' bullpens should be like in decent shape coming into this one. I think Chicago, the Cubs probably have the better of the two bullpens out of the two teams. So I think at best, like it's a bit of a wash, maybe a slight edge to Chicago in that one. And the reason why I like Chicago here is the starting pitching matchup, man. I mean, you got Mitch Keller pitching for Pittsburgh, and I think maybe we're even getting a bit of a discounted line on the Cubs here because Mitch Keller's ERA looks pretty good at 3.93, but dig deeper into his stats, man, he's got a 1.33 whip, so that's not that great. And over his career ERA, he's been pitching since 2019 with the Pittsburgh Pirates. He's been a starter the whole time. He has 3 full seasons as a starter, starting in 2021, and his stats just really have not impressed me the whole time, man. He's 28 years old now, and his stats have been kind of consistently mediocre at best, I would say, with a 4.63 career ERA and 1.44 whip. So you see his stats this season kind of gravitating more in that direction again, slightly below 9 strikeouts per 9 innings, which is, again, what he has this year, and a few too many walks, I would say, and maybe a few too many hits allowed, which has been the case this season and in his career, really. He's allowed more than 1 hit per inning, which is still the case here. His walk number is not terrible, but he's been a little bit too hittable, like I said, and his strikeout numbers have been a bit below 9 strikeouts per 9 innings, so not the most dominant strikeout pitcher. That has been the same this season. Like I said, 51 strikeouts and 16 walks and 57 hits allowed in 55 innings. So the walk number, not horrific, but giving up a bit too many hits and not a totally dominant strikeout pitcher. I mean, he has faced some strong lineups, but again, just like with everybody at this point, this deep into the season, it's been a mix of strong lineups and weak lineups, and he has been really good in the month of May so far, so that's been true. A 12-1 strikeout walk ratio and 15 innings pitched, but one of those starts was a complete game, 1-run performance against the LA Angels, who they don't have a good offense at all, man. So I don't know how much you can take away from that. Sure, it was definitely a very good performance from Keller. There's no doubting that, but it was against a pretty bad offense. But then he did come back, and he had a big game in a divisional series against the Milwaukee Brewers. Went 6 innings in that one, gave up 8 hits, which is a bit too many, but no walks and 7 strikeouts in a shutout performance. And the bullpen came in, and it looks like they almost blew it for him in that one. So he pitched really well against Milwaukee, but I think that means that's going to set him up for a little bit of regression here, man, because before those 2 starts, he'd given up at least 3 earned runs in all but 2 of his starts, and he'd given up 4 earned runs in more than half of them. Although he hasn't given up more than 4 in any of them. So he's been consistently mediocre again throughout the season here. I think he's in line for some regression, though, after such a great start against Milwaukee. 2 really good starts in a row. Even though this is a big divisional game, I kind of expect some letdown out of him, maybe a little bit, maybe a regression a bit, even though, like I said, he should be up for it because it's a big game. But then look at his stats against these Cubs hitters, man. They have a pretty good offense, and his history is not good against Chicago. So that's why I'm making this play on the Cubs here, because I think the ERA is a little bit misleading as far as looking at Keller's. I think his ERA should be a bit higher than it is. He puts too many men on base. And looking at his stats against Chicago, they are rough in a big sample size. So they're familiar with him. They're 24 for 79, and that's also including pitchers in there. Like Hendricks is 0 for 2 against him. So you can kind of throw some of those out too. And throwing those out actually makes his stats look worse against them. But if you include the pitchers hitting against them, the Cubs are still 24 for 79 off in lifetime with 8 doubles, 4 home runs, and 18-9 strikeout walk ratio. So too many walks. It amounts to a 304 batting average and 932 OPS. So his stats against the Cubs, very bad, not good at all. And then on the other side, we have Jameson Taillon pitching for the Cubs. He, I believe, was injured to start the season, came back in mid-April, and he's been pitching well since he's come back, although his walk number isn't very good, but he's been pretty tough to hit. So his stats are, again, a bit of a mix, but he's had good and bad starts. He's faced a couple of good offenses, too, and his last 2 starts are against pretty good offenses in Milwaukee, where he actually did pretty well against Milwaukee, a 6-inning shutout performance against Milwaukee. So both of these pitchers just did that. And then he had a bad start in his most recent start against the Braves, probably the best offense he's faced this year, where he gave up 7 runs. And other than that, he's given up 1 earned run or fewer in every one of his starts besides that one. That one he gave up 7 runs, but only 2 of them were earned. But he still put way too many men on base, 7 hits and 3 walks in 4 innings. So even though some of the runs were unearned, he still put so many men on base that you got to expect that they were going to score and really hurt him in that one. But he wound up only giving up 2 earned runs in that one. It was a bad performance, but I think that sets him up for kind of a bounce-back spot here, man. It's a divisional spot. I think he's going to be ready for it. This season so far, he's a 1.61 ERA and 1.11 whip. I expect you're probably going to see some regression out of him. He's the slightly older of the 2 pitchers. He's still in his early 30s, though. His whip has been pretty good, though, over his career at 1.22, so I don't know if I expect that much of a regression from him in that department. The ERA, he's not going to sustain a 1.6 ERA, obviously. His ERA over his career is 3.93, so expect that to kind of move back to like the 4 range. But I think in this spot, it sets up for a good performance from him in a spot where he's coming off a bad start, and he's facing a team who he does well against in the Pirates and who have the worse offense than the Cubs do. The Cubs have the better offense. Taillon this year, 28 innings pitched so far. He only has 18 strikeouts, so not a great strikeout stat there, but he's never been like a dominant strikeout pitcher, really. He's been more of a control pitcher. He doesn't exactly walk that many guys typically, although this season he's walked 8 guys, so he's got to keep that down. But 3 of them were in that one game against the Braves. So other than that, if you take that game out, it looks a little bit better. And he gave up 2 of the 4 home runs that he's allowed this year in that game as well. So taking out that Braves game, his stats look quite good, really. And he's only given up 23 hits in 28 innings. So he has not been very hittable. And looking at his stats against the Pirates, as I alluded to, we have a decent sample size to look at here. And he has really held the Pirates in check. They're only 9 for 55 off him lifetime. 1 double, 3 home runs. He has a 16.5 strikeout walk ratio against them. So all those stats much better than Keller's are against the Cubs. Taillon has much better numbers against the Pirates. A 164 batting average and 579 OPS. So I'm going to be on the Cubs in this one. I think we have a little bit of a pitching mismatch here. This line looks like it's moved down on the Cubs, though, from -133 to -122. So something's moving the line down, even though the Cubs are public with 74% of the tickets. The Cubs, of course, the public knows they're the better team. They have the better name, sure. They're the team with the better record, but I actually think we're getting a little bit shortchanged on the number in this one because I think the pitching matchup is actually better for the Cubs than it might appear on the surface. And the Cubs do have 86% of the cash on them. So I do see some cash discrepancy coming in on the Cubs in this one too. Cubs also maybe, I don't know. I don't know what else I was going to say on that. They're not in a bounce back spot because they did win yesterday, but I think they're going to want to win, and both teams are going to want to win the series. It's a divisional series. The Cubs, I think, also, like I said, they have the better offense and bullpen, and I think they have the starting pitching edge in this one, and the bullpen rest scenario is basically a wash. So we'll do it on the Chicago Cubs in this one. And then the other play I was going to be on, I don't know if I'm going to do this one now because it depends on the starting pitching matchup, where I see like pregame has this listed as an undecided pitcher now on the side of the Dodgers. So that we need the Dodgers pitcher to be Yamamoto in this one to actually come in on this, because if it's the case, I'm going to play the under in this one if we get Yamamoto pitching. If we don't, I think I'm going to pass on the game. We want to make sure it's Yamamoto in this game, and if it is, I think we're getting good value on this one, man, with the total sitting at 8.5. I don't see the percentages yet on this one, but maybe it's lined at 8.5 because the odds makers actually aren't expecting that Yamamoto is going to be the starter, because I looked at that and I said 8.5. That is too high as far as what the starting pitching matchup is, man. So if it remains 8.5, or even if it remains somewhere in like the 8 ballpark, I think I'm going to come in the under on this one if Yamamoto is pitching for the Dodgers. If he's not, then I'm not going to come in and make the play. Let me look at a good old RotoWire here and see what's happening here. Yamamoto, I don't see him listed. I don't see any injury news on Yamamoto, so I don't see why he wouldn't be playing in this one. Would be scratched, but we'll see what happens in this one. But we look at Cincinnati against the Dodgers. It hasn't been a particularly high-scoring series, really. The first game was pretty high. Well, I guess first game was 7-3. Second game was 4-0. Oh, actually, it has been high-scoring. I keep forgetting there was a third game already in this series. This is a 4-game series. So actually, the first 2 were somewhat high-scoring. A 7-2 win for Cincinnati in the first game, then a 7-3 win for the Dodgers. Then yesterday's was lower scoring with a 4-0 Dodgers win. And both starting pitchers did quite well in the game yesterday. Buehler and Ashcraft, I guess he just did okay. But Cincinnati rescued the rest of their bullpen by bringing in Spears for 3 innings. So Cincinnati really saved their bullpen yesterday. So their bullpen's in decent shape coming into this one. And then on the Dodgers side, Buehler pitched, and they did use a couple of their better relievers because it was a little bit of a closer game, but they still only wound up using 3 relievers, and a couple of them are, I would say, not some of their better relievers. In Grove, who's kind of been struggling, even though for some reason LA has been using him in like a late inning, like close game role. I don't really know why, like almost like a setup type of role, because I don't think Grove is that good, and he was in the starting pitching rotation, I think, for a bit. So I don't know, but either way, I think the bullpen situation is still fine to play a full game under in this one, with Cincinnati basically having pretty much their entire pen basically being available today, and the Dodgers having a decent amount of their pen still available. And looking at the starting pitching matchup, that's where the under becomes pretty clear in this one, man. As Hunter Green is pitching for Cincinnati, he looks like he's finally putting together like maybe like a very, very good season for once, even though it is early. He struggled a bit in his first couple of seasons. He came into the league at a very young age. Didn't do that badly really in 2022, and then took a step back a little bit last year. He's always been a very, very good strikeout pitcher, but he's been putting too many men on base until this season, where he is still walking too many guys. So this season he has a 1.18 whip and 3.27 ERA because he's been striking guys out and not allowing many hits. In 52 in the third innings, 40 hits allowed, which is a pretty low hit number there. 22 walks is certainly way too high, so he's wild. But he has 58 strikeouts, so a high strikeout rate, and he has not been that hittable either. And he's got at least 6 innings in all but 3 of his starts. And those 3 were against good offenses, though he's facing a good offense today, too, in the Dodgers. One was the first game of the season against Washington, which I think you can just usually throw out a first game of the season, really. His other bad starts were against like Milwaukee. Seattle was one of those ones. Seattle's okay, I think, and then Baltimore. He didn't go that deep into that one. Oh, and I guess Arizona as well, so excuse me. So it's a few starts there, but still he's been very good overall in the season. And then his stats against the Dodgers, we have a decent sample size to work with. And even though some of it might have been because the Dodgers, it was their first time seeing them, but some of these guys have seen him a couple times now, and the Dodgers still have not gotten it together against Green. Green has been very good against these Dodgers hitters. They're only 2 for 28 off him lifetime. Only 2 guys on the Dodgers have hits off of him. Only 1 extra base hit, a home run by Freddie Freeman, which is his only hit ever off him. A 10-2 strikeout walk ratio for Green against the Dodgers, and that amounts to an .071 batting average and .312 OPS in 28 at-bats. So Green's stats are very good against these Dodgers hitters, so I like that. And then you got Yamamoto. He's making his first season in the majors. He's a young guy as well, even though he came over from Japan. He's only 25, making his first season in the majors here, playing his first season, and he's been quite good, although not as dominant as his counterpart Imanaga has been. Yamamoto has still been quite impressive with a 3.21 ERA and a 1.03 whip, so very low whip. He's got 53 strikeouts and only 53 strikeouts, 10 walks, very good strikeout walk ratio. The number of walks may be slightly high, only 39 hits allowed and 47 2/3. So similar to Green, where his walk number is a bit high, but he still has a really high strikeout rate and has not allowed many hits. So he's been very tough to hit. And if you take that debut game out where he gave up 5 runs in 1 inning against San Diego, and I think you can throw that out because it was just his first start in the majors. He's been quite good besides that, and he's been pretty good in this month as well in May, only allowing 15 hits and 19 2/3, only 16 strikeouts, but also only 4 walks. And he's allowed 3 home runs, so that's kind of jacking up his numbers a little bit. He's coming off one of his lesser performances of the season, really, against San Francisco, where he gave up 4 runs, still had a 6.2 strikeout walk ratio in that one, but in 5 2/3, put a few too many men on base and allowed too many runs to come across in that one. So maybe he's even in a little bit of a bounce back spot, coming into this one. And the Reds have never seen him before. And the Reds, I think, have maybe a little bit of an overrated offense because they were hot to start the season. They were scoring a lot of runs to start the season, but I think they're, like, if you look at their actual hitting stats, they're indicative of a team that shouldn't be scoring as many runs as they were early in the season. So the Reds, I don't think, have the greatest lineup, and none of them have ever seen Yamamoto before. So you're going to have that aspect coming in where Yamamoto is completely new to them. They don't know what to expect with him. So usually that's an advantage to the pitcher the first time around. So we need to make sure that he is actually the starter for the Dodgers. I don't know why he's not listed as the starter on a pre-game's screen here. ESPN still has him listed as the starter. So if he is, then it's going to be an under 8.5 in that game. Dodgers Reds, and then the other plays will be on the Chicago Cubs, minus 120, whatever I said, minus 124, I think is maybe the best you can do on that one right now on the money line. I think might be the quickest, easiest, the best way to play that one. It's a short enough money line. And then in NBA, Denver Nuggets, minus 4.5. Let's get it, man. Peace.